I think I think we're just excited to be a part of this sort of legacy of Houston film. Yeah, exactly.
Hi, I'm Ricardo Enrique. I'm one of the co-directors of Cloudmaker.
Hi, I'm Antonio Lasanta, and I am also one of the co-directors of Cloudmaker.
All right, I kind of want to jump right in and ask you guys about the film that you're making. What was the inspiration behind that? What's kind of the driving force to tell a story like Cloudmaker?
Yeah. I think the impetus for it was feeling a kind of desire to engage with the city of Houston, engage with its environmental consciousness, and tell a story that felt hyper-local and relevant to a lot of the issues that are sort of pertinent to the city's infrastructure and the communities that reside here. There was a news article that largely inspired the idea for the film. It was showcasing one of the neighborhoods on the East End, Harrisburg, Manchester, which is surrounded on all four sides by oil refineries and chemical storage plants and waste facilities and recycling facilities. And it was showing kind of the layout of the neighborhood. There's a community center in a park, and it's surrounded on all three sides by this sort of toxic infrastructure. And I went to go visit, and you could sort of get a sense of the proximity of these facilities. You could smell it in the air. It had a very sort of like rank, sour chemical smell to it. And there was also kind of the stark reality of it being so close to a community center, being so close to a playground. You saw children's sort of toys in the front yards. And there was this beautiful mural that depicted the children who lived there. Very colorful, very beautiful, but it also had images of those smokestacks in that same mural. And in the article it had mentioned that the kids called those smokestacks Cloudmakers. And that was very impactful because it was something about the imagination of a child to kind of mythologize something so poisonous in that way, you know, to make room for it in their reality. And then as I kind of delved into more research, it's sort of like you became aware that this is a persistent issue, not just in the city of Houston, but nationwide and globally, where a lot of these pollutant facilities are right up against black and brown neighborhoods, low-income neighborhoods that are oftentimes deemed sacrifice zones because the health of those people oftentimes get sacrificed for the sake of the industry and its wealth and its capital gain.
Absolutely.
So that it felt very potent, and it kind of just sort of, I guess, fell together in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you come in, Antonio? What was
Yeah.
that made you want to join this project?
Yeah, so I met Ricardo in May of this year, 2025. I was sort of hired to direct a staged reading of their play, Los Pecados de Iberia, at Stages Theater. It was a part of their Latinx theater festival, Sin Muros. And I mean, I had to do a whole sort of director's application, and I had to talk about the play and what I sort of envisioned for it, and I believe you were part of the sort of process of saying like, yes, this person gets it, this person, blah, blah, blah. So I guess ultimately there was something that Ricardo saw in me, and there was something that I connected to in their writing that really sort of spoke to me. We're both Puerto Rican, so there was that was there in common, but also there was something deeply spiritual and poetic and kind of epic, but also still very vulnerable in their writing. And I believe in all of the things that I've read of theirs that they've written. But that sort of came together, and we ended up working together for a couple months on this staged reading. You know, we only had a week to actually get in the space and put the reading together, but we sort of met beforehand with our assistant director Alejandro Martinez, who is also he's actually our UPM on this film. We've all sort of come back together months later to work on this. Through that process, Ricardo and I realized that we were aligned, I think, many ways, both in terms of values, but also artistically, creatively. We sort of think about the same things from, I think, creative standpoint, but also spiritual standpoint. And so I guess I don't want to speak for you, you can speak to it, but I feel like once we finished the theatrical project we were working on, it was just sort of like well, we have so much momentum creatively, collaboratively, why stop here? Let's just keep going. Ricardo had already gotten the grant for Cloudmaker. It was already scheduled to begin, pre-production after the festival. And so Ricardo came to me and was like, I've never, this is my first short. Do you want to work on this with me? And I was like, yeah, let's have a joint sleigh and maximize our joint sleigh.
Absolutely, I love that. I love when
Yeah.
y'all can work together on one project and kind of use two heads as opposed to one. I feel like it helps a lot in the storytelling process and on the back end as well. But again, with the film, I kind of like to go into that a little bit. So I like, from what you told me about it, I like that it's from the perspective of the affected person as opposed to someone on the outside or someone trying to help them. I feel like we get that point of view a lot, like in big Hollywood movies, like Aaron Brockovich, love that movie, but it's like, we're not really seeing any of the affected people firsthand.
Yeah.
And so I really like that that's where your POV is. Was that something important to you to make sure it's being told from that point of view?
I think absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right. There is oftentimes with a lot of these narratives that have kind of colonial undertones where you have this sort of outsider who comes in and plays the savior. And I think there's something really powerful about centering the people who are being predominantly and directly affected by these industries. It was an opportunity, I think, to showcase the real emotional impacts that these realities have. To kind of illustrate some of the nuance and complicatedness. This is a city that's run on, every city's sort of run on fossil fuels, but Houston's sort of energy capital of America. It's such a, and so with that, there comes a lot of complexity. You can't sort of black or white sort of say everyone who works for these companies or these industries are evil, or that it's you're a bad person, or that you're actively contributing to environmental degradation by doing so, because they are providing a lot of jobs, and for a lot of people it's an income, it's a way of life, it's opportunity, it's support for their family. They're not sort of directly implicated in the decision making or in the we're gonna build this giant refinery off the coast of Guyana now kind of behaviors. And so there were different iterations of it. There was one, I think the initial one that I introduced Antonio to, it was a bit more, it had a character that was on the inside of, they were like an executive, and it felt a bit easy to kind of just be like, oh, good, bad, or like hero, villain. So we decided to change it to a mother-daughter relationship, to kind of get a bit at that nuance of it's not so easy to kind of find fault in anyone who maybe their line of work has them being involved with these industries and with this line of work.
Yeah, it's really hard to try to point fingers at someone when it's something that's their livelihood. It's the way that they're providing for their family. So I feel a lot of empathy from a point of view like that.
I think to Ricardo's point about the original draft that I came in on, it was interesting. It definitely had a villain. And I think it had a face that you could point to as a villain. But so often I think when we look at systemic issues and historical sort of impacts on communities, marginalized communities, and the way that they're affected, and we think about the illnesses that are contracted or the sort of levels of wealth and inequality that people are kept in generation after generation. I think it sort of transforms into the villains are not just one person. It's like that sort of negative adverse effects are also passed down generation through generation. And so I think when we kind of went back to the drawing board and refocused it into more of an intimate sort of family thing between two people, it was easier to have a bit of that nuance between the characters, and also nuance about the whole issue of not being able to just so easily sort of be like, well, it's this person who's making these decisions, when it is a sort of global sort of systemic issue that is affecting, humans and other creatures and the planet itself. And it's not just. It's easy to try and find a fall guy for I think.
For sure.
Things like this, because then it feels like if once you get that person out of there, or once you deal with that person, then the situation is over. And so much of these things, like environmentally and with humanity and the world around us, these things have such long-lasting effects.
Oh,
and I think the current, the film that we're shooting is dealing with that and is sort of trying to grapple with the effects of that, and also the effects of complicity, I guess. The way that we all sort of day to day, either just sort of like whether we're forced to by systems or we've accepted the things that are happening to us, we make tiny decisions that we have to navigate through the ways that we're impacted by it.
Yeah, and you talk about complicity, and I feel like even, because I live in second ward, so I kind of grew up with those things in my backyard, and I feel like, not in a complicit way, but it's something that we're just so used to that like no one really thinks about it anymore. Like there's so much chemically here in the air that I'm sure like has an effect on us that we don't even realize.
Yeah.
And I think one of the stories, first-hand stories that you posted on Instagram, someone was talking about their animals not living like a long time and constantly getting rashes. Like I'm dealing with a rash on my dog right now, and it made me like second guess that. I was like, gosh, is that something that I should be worried about living where I live and having those kinds of things in my backyard? So I don't feel like that we're complicit in what's going on here, but I feel like we're just so used to it, and it's the norm of where we're at that people just kind of like, oh, that's just how it is over here. Like if we could afford to move somewhere, we move somewhere else, but that's not the case for a lot of people over here. Like we're all kind of stuck where we're at. So I think it's really important that getting those first-hand accounts as well. I read those the other night, and it was just I didn't even think about the repercussions that something like that has. So for your characters, without giving too much away, is there something that you kind of want to review about them and their experience with that? Is that kind of taken from a first-hand account, or was this more fabricated?
It was inspired. There was a story that I heard from a friend of mine whose grandparents lived in one of these neighborhoods, and his grandfather worked at one of these plants for many years, eventually got sick and passed away. But I think the factor that kind of really struck me, I mean, that in itself is awful, but his wife, his grandmother, he would take off all his clothes before coming in the house because he was constantly exposed to these chemicals, and she would take them and she would wash them. And from handling those clothes directly, she also contracted illness. And so I was really struck by the way that it kind of indirectly affected people who live with people who live in, who work at these places. And then I heard a similar story somewhere else. I think I was listening to a podcast that was essentially talking about the issue of these fence-line communities along the Gulf Coast. And there was a similar story, kind of like the same thing, partner would wash the clothes and then got sick because of it. So although there's not a direct reference to that in the film, there used to be in a previous version that was kind of a bit of inspiration for what had happened to this family.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I can't Yeah.
I was gonna say, sort of towards the point we just made about complicity. I guess maybe that word is a little charged. I think there's.
Oh, and like I know what
Sure.
you mean.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna offer for our characters at least. There's a bit of, I think, a normalization and sort of this idea that, or normalization out of necessity. You know, this struggle between. If I acknowledge that my health is being impacted or that I'm not living in like like things around me, people are passing early or pets are experiencing illnesses in rapid speed, like do I move, do I like leave? But this is also my community and I know people here and I'm raising my kids here and I want to stay in my community, but there's always this sort of looming structure of like a physical structure, but also like a sort of spiritual, mental sort of structure of I have to be here to survive, but also I'm here and it's impacting my survival. And so I think that is something that is kind of a central conflict in the film between the mother and daughter who are coming to terms with the loss of a loved one and the inevitability of grief. Like you can't ignore it forever, or it is incredibly difficult to sort of ignore grief, and how grief can, you know, people deal with it in different ways, and when they come together, it's not always. It doesn't always synchronize, and so I think those are big parts of without giving things away, big parts of the characters that are in the script.
Yeah. And y'all have 3 central characters?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that's
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Tell me, I guess, you know, where we can find you guys on social and what we can do to support this shameless plug.
Yeah. So we have our film has a page on Instagram at the Cloudmaker Film. That's where we're doing all of our sort of film updates. We're sort of at the beginning of the cycle. We shoot in about from today about 3 weeks, and I mean we're working with Slated, yes, right now, which is so cool. I'm so excited to be a part of this sort of new thing that you're bringing to Houston.
Yeah, and be able to share, you know, stories like y'all's with other people, especially, you know, when it pertains to stuff in Houston and like, you know, the things that we go through here. You know, it's one thing to write something fictional and have this beautiful thing, but it's also another thing to have something, you know, very real and authentic. And so I think it's important. I love to highlight the stories like y'all's. So thank y'all for sitting down with me for it.
Yeah.
Of course. And also, just to say, included on that Instagram page, we are still wanting to gather more personal stories. So if anyone watches this and wants to share anonymously or just sort of give your personal experience about living perhaps in close proximity to these refineries or these facilities, can also DM.
Some type of link to you guys so they can send those in for sure.
Yeah.
You can come to set.
Come over.
Come to set. We'll continue the conversation.
Continue the conversation.
Yeah. And I think that there are so many stories that need to be told from this region and this place, from so many different cultures, and Houston is such a multicultural place. So I think we're just excited to be a part of this sort of legacy of Houston film. Exactly.
You know, of Houston.
Yeah.
So awesome. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hang out.
Yes. Yeah. We're excited to see you. Yeah.